very, very tricky when you're abroad to begin to think of ways to invest, even as you remain committed to your financial obligations back home. A number of people complaining about black taxis, a number of people just genuinely want to secure their future, generate wealth for themselves, generate wealth for their children and family, and just live comfortably. And of course, we know that saving money is not always the best way to invest in. But when you talk about investing, what are the smarter ways? What are the options? What are the opportunities available to you? These and more are what we'll be discussing here today. We have amazing panelists and speakers who will be doing justice to this topic. One thing is certain, across the globe, Nigerians in diaspora are doing far more than sending money home today. We see that they're building businesses. A number of people also invest in real estate, creating jobs, supporting innovation, and so much more, right? And what we are trying to do with this webinar is basically saying there are smarter ways to make money. A lot of people are earning more than ever before. But as they're earning, they're not investing because there are no very clear options to them. So today's webinar is simply designed to explore practical, smart, and sustainable ways that you can invest at home. And also, while we're discussing this, we'll also clearly discuss the realities, right? The risks, the opportunities, and strategies successful investors are using to navigate the market confidently. So whether you're a Nigerian, you're connected to the Diaspora community, or you're just simply curious about investment opportunities in one of Africa's most dynamic economies, I'd like to tell you that you're in the right place this afternoon. We're excited, of course, to learn from our speakers, to hear different perspectives, and hopefully we expect that you leave here today with very clear vision and strategy on how to invest. Just some bits of house rules before we continue. Very soon we'll have our keynote address, our keynote presentation, and after that we'll take a poll just to feel the pulse of our audience, and after that we would have a panel discussion. If you have questions for us, any question as far as it relates to investing smartly, especially as a diasporian, you can drop your questions in the Q&A session, and we will take those questions. We'll have a team that would could answer it on the back end, and if we have to, we can read them here and we'll take the questions. So you're in the right place. Thank you for joining. If you have friends who are connected or who are based abroad or connected to the diaspora, please get them to join as we get started. Before we have the keynote address, I would just like us to just play a short video about part of our services here at Coronation Merchant Bank.
In 2023 and 2024, Coronation Merchant Bank achieved remarkable milestones. We closed 80 deals across 20 industries, impacting businesses and communities alike. Our expertise and commitment to excellence have made these achievements possible. From groundbreaking mergers to strategic investments, each deal reflects our dedication to driving growth and creating value. 6 trillion in deals, creating value worth over 6 trillion. Our team has demonstrated unparalleled expertise and insights. 20 industries. We've made our mark in 20 diverse industries, from finance to technology and beyond. Driving growth. At Coronation Merchant Bank, we are not just closing deals, we're driving growth and shaping the future.
All right, there you have it. At Coronation Merchant Bank, we're not just driving deals, or we are driving growth and shaping the future. So really, if there's someone who should be, talking to you about building wealth in diaspora and smarter ways to generate income and, grow your finances, is certainly Coronation Merchant Bank. So you are certainly in the right place. All right, right about now, I would quickly introduce our keynote speaker, so she can go ahead with her presentation. Our keynote speaker for today is Modupe Enlaye. She's a convener and COO, the Bond Awards. Modupe is a lawyer, media executive, and diaspora platform convener, shaping narratives and influence across Africa and the global diaspora. With over a decade of experience in Nigeria's banking sector, working with leading financial institutions and founding a microfinance institution focused on supporting small businesses, she brings deep insights into wealth creation, financial systems, and cross-border investments. She's the founder of TWM Studios, host of Talk with Mo, and convener of the prestigious Bond Awards, a growing global ecosystem spotlighting African excellence and diaspora impact. She also leads the Extraordinary Women Summit, advancing women's leadership across continents. She's a recipient of several awards, including being named one of Canada's top 100 Black women to watch in 2024. Modupe is known for building platforms that connect people, shape narratives, and drive lasting impact. Good afternoon, Modupe. Very, very happy to have you here.
Good afternoon, Vincent, and hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching from. This is certainly a conversation that we should be having, and I just want to say thank you to Coronation Bank for convening this all-important conversation and topic. And before I go ahead, I just want to clarify that the topic I'm going to be speaking about today, I'm not approaching it from the perspective of a financial analyst or an investment expert. Rather, I'll be speaking from the perspective of someone who's lived in the diaspora for about 2 decades and someone who understands the opportunities and the anxieties Nigerians in diaspora navigate when they think about investing back home in Nigeria. So without further ado, and I think that's what we're going to be talking about. That's what we're going to be unpacking today from this topic. So we're just going to go right ahead. I'm going to be sharing my slides with our audience, and I just want to see if that's just give me 1 second. I'm going to be sharing my slides. Can you see that? I'm just trying to, yeah. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, so when we talk about the Nigerian diaspora, the first thing that comes to mind is the stories behind how migration started or how people started remitting money back home. So it is largely often framed around remittances, sending money back home for family support, to pay school fees, to fund healthcare, or help relatives who are having economic challenges. And while remittances have their place, we find that remittances back home, for whatever purpose, it's not a sustainable wealth strategy. Wealth strategy or rebuilding wealth requires strategy, it requires intentionality, it requires planning. And that means the discussion around wealth creation, wealth preservation, wealth building is beginning to evolve among the Nigerian diaspora. We're no longer moving into simply remittances, but we've gone beyond sentiment as well. And what do I mean by sentiments? In the past, or still presently, some are still in that mold. You find that many Nigerians are in this place where they're investing because family members pressure them to, or FOMO, fear of missing out. All my friends back home are building huge houses in the village. I have to follow suit. Or just to even position themselves as a visible proof of success abroad. So people are building oversized houses that they rarely use. They're investing in businesses they rarely understand and entering into poorly structured partnership. And that's because emotional investing ignores governance, it ignores strategy, it ignores structure, and long-term sustainability. So we also get into this strategic investing, and that is the whole crux of today because we just don't want to invest. This webinar is called Smart Ways Nigerians in Diaspora Are Investing Back Home. And there's no smarts without strategy. So as opposed to emotional investing, strategic investing, ask questions. Does this investment generate value? Is it scalable? Is it legally protected? Are those structures in place? Does it align with my long-term goal? What are my long-term goals? So strategic investing requires data, it requires structure, planning, and long-term thinking. Now, you're going to hear me say this phrase over and over again throughout my presentation. Emotion may influence decisions, but it must never replace strategy. So, and that's why we have to think about legacy building. Many people not only work hard abroad and achieve visible success, they get the luxury cars, the big houses, they go on beautiful vacations and various status symbols. But wealth has gone beyond that kind of lifestyle. It is now more about what survives us. What stays after we've left here? What says I existed here? And legacy building shifts the focus from temporary lifestyle to long-term impact. We're talking about businesses, institutions, investments, scholarships, even opportunities, mentorships, and systems that continue to function after one's lifetime. And that is where diaspora investing becomes powerful, when success becomes transferable, not only across generations, but across continents, across economies. And so, with all of that going on, we see now that there's a shift. There's a shift in the mindset. People are beginning to shift from personal success, those status symbols, the big houses. Yeah, they're nice. They're nice to have. There's a place for them. But much more than the personal success, people are beginning to think long term into generational wealth, into simply accumulating income to building institutions. And that's again leading to that legacy I was talking about. So as already highlighted, the first generation of diaspora Nigerians focused on survival and stability abroad. Success for them at the point meant finding stable employment, earning well, getting established and acquiring assets. But eventually, that will not work because it's not sustainable. You can only work so much. You can only create so much wealth. Creating wealth, anyone can do that. But preserving wealth, growing wealth takes art. And so that's where generational income, wealth comes in. From personal success, now people are beginning to think generational. The goal begins to shift in not just making money, but how to preserve it, how to grow it, and how to move it across generations. The question people are asking now is no longer how much can I earn, but what can I build that lasts beyond me? From that question comes an awareness that income accumulation isn't just a wealth strategy, because high income without structure can disappear within one generation, can disappear within one's lifetime. So many wealthy families, they lose everything within 1 or 2 generations. And that's because they've not structured their wealth. So that leads us then to institutional building, because the highest level of wealth creates systems, builds businesses, foundations, investment structures, ecosystems, opportunities for others. True wealth grows even when you're not actively working. And that mindset shift takes us into the opportunities that exist among diaspora, Nigerian diaspora, and the opportunities that exist back home within the local aspect. So we have global exposure. Nigerians have gained access to advanced education, global systems, governance structures, investment cultures, and operational expertise. That exposure is very valuable because it changes how people think about even investing. It changes how people think about risk, how people think about acquiring businesses, structure, leadership, governance, and more, and even scalability. Now, get into local impact and the beauty of this global exposure. I want you to think of this opportunity as some sort of funnel, starting with global exposure at the apex of it, and then beginning to narrow down. So the beauty of that global exposure is because it can be imported or imported into creating local transformation or local impact. That's why professionals are uniquely positioned to bridge that global expertise gap and create opportunities back home. And that's because they can deploy what I call diaspora capital. Often, when we hear capital, our mind is racing to financial resources. But it isn't only finances. It's not just financial resources. Diaspora capital includes network, mentorship, influence, opening doors for someone, transfer of knowledge, transfer of skills. Sometimes introductions and knowledge are much more viable or valuable than funding itself. And why all of this global exposure, local impact, diaspora capital, they're all leading to what I call growth, the African growth. And while I've kind of put African growth, the slide references African growth, the reality is that within the African continent, Nigeria is probably the most dynamic economy, from entrepreneurship to innovation. And as I think about that, my mind goes back to the recently concluded AMVCA awards and how Nigeria is shaking the whole world just from one industry, from the fashion industry alone. So imagine what the growth would look like if all of this diaspora capital or global exposure is brought to bear into the local impact, into other industries, into healthcare, into finance, and much more. So it's because of its population, entrepreneurial culture, and innovation potential, Nigeria remains a potential investment opportunities, and not only in very small structures or what do you call it now, sectors, but across many sectors. And that leads us into what I call this strategic diaspora investment funnels. We've already identified Nigeria as a dynamic, growing economy. And for the diaspora investors, they might be wondering, well, so where do I plug in? But I like to see this as a funnel where the list, the one at the cross-border capital strategies is not necessarily the list, but something that feeds off. It can go upwards or it can go downwards that feeds off of each other. So strategy is one word that you're going to hear me say throughout this session because there are investments and there are strategic investments, and I'm going to be focusing on the latter today. So starting with strategic diaspora investment funnels, I'll start with the real assets. Real assets, we have examples of them. Real assets are asset-backed wealth creation. It's about positioning capital in investment that holds enduring value and can continue appreciating across economies, across currencies. Some examples of that are yield generating investments, which focuses on investments that produce recurring income rather than sitting idly, investments that are sitting idly. I think of the dirty December and people looking for houses, and we have some of my big brothers and sisters in the diaspora that will have huge mansions in Ikoyi, that can be yielding so much more income to them. So when I think of in smart or strategic investment, I'm thinking of money that continues to produce for us. We need to be moving beyond ownership for prestige to ownership for productivity. And that's what that house in Ikoyi would do when we are able to section it into apartments for Airbnb that can be yielding money all year round. That is moving from prestige to productivity. And nothing says productivity and prestige cannot coexist. Yield generating investments may include rental income, commercial leases, real estate incomes, income stream, dividend paying assets, infrastructure returns, and other recurring cash flow opportunities. Secondly, another example of real asset is strategic acquisitions, which simply means investing intentionally rather than, again, emotionally. Investments should not focus simply on acquiring assets. Instead, it should focus on acquiring the right assets and the right kind of assets for the right reason within someone's broader long-term goals. And our long-term goals will differ from one person to the other. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. So that long-term goal can only be identified by you and maybe your financial advisor. Next to that, we have structured ownership, which means we need to have proper documentations in place, structures in place, legal protection, due diligence. In fact, structure protects not only the asset itself, but the continuity of wealth across generation, because wealth without structure is not strategic, it's not smart. And that's one of the distinguishing markers of a sophisticated investor from an emotional or sentimental investor. I think I'm going to go back up there to that. And so I'm going to go into enterprise investment, which is the second marker there. And enterprise investment simply refers to investing opportunities or in businesses, entrepreneurship, innovative systems, and scalable commercial ventures. It includes startups, your SMEs, your innovation-driven businesses, technology companies, manufacturing, agribusiness, name it. Enterprise investment allows diaspora Nigerians to participate directly in the growth and scaling of businesses that have potentials to create lasting value. Again, when diasporas think of investment back home, we should be thinking of a long-term generational legacy building. The next one I have there is venture-backed growth, which refers to investing in businesses and ventures with strong potential for expansion and scalability. Nigeria's entrepreneurs ecosystem is filled with very ambitious founders, innovative businesses, and scalable ideas. Many businesses don't lack ideas in Nigeria. What they lack is capital, they lack infrastructure, they lack network, they lack systems, and all of these are what the Nigerian diaspora are uniquely positioned to provide. We also have innovation ecosystems within that enterprise investment, which refers to supporting environments where innovations can thrive. Innovation requires capital, mentorship, infrastructure, again, network, talent, and enabling systems. Nigeria is already seeing significant innovations across multiple sectors. Enterprise investment isn't just about investing in one company. It's about strengthening entire ecosystem that allows the entire sector or the entire industry to flourish. Next, we're going to talk about knowledge transfer or knowledge capital transfer. This is one of the most powerful contributions the diaspora can make to invest in Nigeria. And, so there's knowledge transfer, there's scalable economic impact. I'm just going to go through this because we're fast going against time. So unlike consumer-driven spending, scalable enterprises continue to generate value over time, creating a multiplier effect, investing in businesses, creating broader economic transformation beyond individual returns. So we have structured wealth vehicles, cross-border strategies. All of those are intentional wealth positioning across multiple countries, currencies, markets, and all of those are investment strategies and that the diaspora can be looking into. Now we're going to go into risk of unstructured finance. And of course, there's the informal investment channels. One of the biggest challenges for diaspora isn't just simply identifying opportunities, but managing investments remotely with confidence, with transparency and accountability. Nigerians work hard abroad. Nigerians work hard at home as well. But Nigerians abroad working hard, yet they feel financially exposed when it comes to investing back home. And that's because some of them have lost money through poorly structured businesses or arrangements. Others have built assets they cannot properly manage because they are far away. And many are asking the same question, how do I build that wealth safely back home? So informal investment channels, apart from fraud and misrepresentation and poorly structured transactions, some of the challenges we face in diaspora is this informal channels. Their friends, their families, their colleagues, associates who are just encouraging us to invest back home. Many people abroad feel disconnected from the local market and therefore rely heavily on these informal channels. The problem is that these informal structures, they lack transparency, they lack the structure, they lack the oversight or even protection. And in many cases, the issue is not necessarily the investment opportunity itself, but the absence of those structures. And then we have weak governance, which is just feeding off of that. It's just telling us that we shouldn't be making emotion-led decision making, because when we're not taking time to go through our due diligence and think strategically, think long term, we're going to fall into all of these holes of emotion-led decision making and take on the risk of limited due diligence. Now, this is why structure matters in all of this. Structure provides strategic diversification, which means intentionally spreading your investment across different assets, classes, sectors, currencies, markets, and investment cycles. The goal is to reduce vulnerability and concentration risk. And many people unintentionally expose themselves by placing too much capital in one sector, in one geography, in one currency, and a type of a particular kind of investment. Strategic investors understand that market shifts, economics fluctuate, currencies move, and industries evolve. Smart investing is about building resilience through intentional diversification across sectors, across geographies, across economies, and currencies. Next, we get on into capital preservation, which is the discipline of protecting wealth from unnecessary loss, volatility, inflation, poor investment decisions, and unmanaged risk. Many people focus heavily on making money, but many people don't think too long about keeping the money, preserving it, growing it, multiplying that money. And we need to understand that wealth creation and wealth preservation are two different things. The first generation of immigrants will typically focus on wealth accumulation, but sustainable wealth requires preservation. While wealth creation is important, wealth preservation is equally very essential. And so structure matters because there's currency and inflation risk that they can help protect. And this is currency and inflation risk is the most relevant themes for the Nigerians in diaspora. Many diaspora investors are constantly navigating exchange rate fluctuation, inflation, currency depreciation, purchasing power erosion, and much more. For many Nigerians abroad, wealth strategy is no longer about simply earning abroad, but it is about preserving that value across currencies and protecting your purchasing power. And that's why we need to explore diversified portfolio and cross-border strategies, which I referenced in the previous slide. And that is why structure matters in all of this. Generational wealth and architecture, again, refers to intentional designing systems. And that is why structure matters. I can't say that enough, because it is in building structure, it is intentionally putting a structure together in place that you can begin to think long term and how to preserve and how to make this into generational wealth. We think of the Ford motors today, we think of Rockefeller, we think of so many people, and even within the Nigerian context, Dangote, but you don't have to be a Dangote to make generational wealth. You can begin with that long-term vision. The goal of investment today must look beyond wealth creation for one lifetime to building systems that allow wealth, opportunity, and impact to continue across generations. And that is why institutions matter. Just very quickly, institutional matters because they provide institutional expertise, which includes professional investments, insight, market intelligence, wealth management experience. Now, they're servicing lots of customers. And because they have lots of clients across various sectors, they're able to bring all of that knowledge to bear in for one particular a customer or client. Strategic wealth creation is not built on guesswork. We need institutions who have this expertise. And as portfolios become more complex, investors are beginning or are increasingly needing more advisory, more of those institutional expertise that I'm talking about. That complexity for our world today requires expertise. As well becomes more sophisticated, so should the systems and expertise that supports it. Secondly, institutions provide governance and credibility. When we talked about the risk earlier on, we talked about unstructured what do you call it now, investing or in unstructured channels. And institutions provide governance and credibility, which reduces risk, uncertainty, and vulnerability. Many diaspora investors are not necessarily afraid of investing in Nigeria. They're afraid of the absence of maybe structure, but we have institutions, and I'm glad Coronation Bank is taking lead in providing education platforms like this. So they also provide premium investment access, which often professionals need to professionally manage investments, structured products, fixed income opportunities. These opportunities are often difficult to access through informal or unstructured investing channels. As diaspora wealth grows, investors increasingly seek diversification, institutional grade investing access or opportunities, and professionally structured wealth vehicle that provide stronger structure and long-term positioning. And that is one of the reasons institutions matter. Strategic wealth advisory is another reason institution matters. The most sophisticated investors are not simply chasing opportunities today. They are building comprehensive long-term wealth strategies, which you can get through credible institutions. And that's why institutions like Coronation Merchant Bank is playing an increasingly important role, as I've mentioned before, not simply as a financial service providers, but as strategic partners helping diaspora investors navigate wealth creation and structure, credibility, and long-term perspective. Now, the next slide is, okay, we've talked about all of this. So what does true wealth look like? In a nutshell, true wealth, if we think of creating true wealth today, we should look at wealth that builds enterprises, that creates systems, companies, ecosystems that continue to create value over time. Wealth becomes transformational when it creates employment, productivity, innovation, and long-term economic value. The highest form of wealth is generational wealth that continues producing beyond an individual's lifetime. It fuels innovation. Capital has the power to accelerate ideas, innovation, technology, create creativity and problem solving. Innovation often requires funding, as we all know. And there's no development, there's no economy in the world today that's developing at any rate without innovation. So when capital supports innovation, it accelerates progress. And that is what we want to see for our home country. So any kind of investing that we're thinking about, we should be thinking of, if I'm creating true wealth, does it build enterprise? Is it fueling innovation? Does it create opportunities? Is it legacy in nature? Does it outlive generations? Wealth becomes generational when it passes beyond one lifetime. And like I say, this is the highest form of wealth. Many people achieve success, but few create systems that survive. And true wealth continues after you've long existed. And that takes me to what I call the Bond Awards perspective. I founded the Bond Awards, and through the Bond Awards, I've had this front row seat to the evolution of Nigerians in diaspora globally. I've seen Nigerians building extraordinary influence across industries, across countries, but I've also seen a growing desire among them to move beyond personal success to a generational strategic impact in Nigeria back home. The Bond Award celebrates Nigerians in diaspora, and the Bond Awards highlights Nigerians who are making extraordinary impact globally. It's so while I'm resident in Canada, the Bond Award is not just for Canadians. We've celebrated Nigerians who are doing well in the United States, in UK, in other parts of Africa. It highlights their achievements. And we started the Bond Awards because often these success stories, if they're told at all, they're rarely ever told. If they're told at all, they're often misrepresented or mischaracterized or even overlooked. And so the whole idea is to ensure that diaspora success is recognized. But beyond that, and for the purpose of this webinar, that diaspora success is increasingly translating into investments back home, into mentorship, into building network, philanthropy, institutional influence back home. Many successful diaspora Nigerians still maintain the emotional and economic ties to Nigeria. But what is remarkable and what is very encouraging that I see is this growing desire to channel their successes back home. And that goal is what is the crux of what we're discussing today. The diaspora conversation is evolving beyond money transfers, beyond family support or consumption. It's now more about influence. It's now more about leadership, strategy, long-term investment. And the next phase of diaspora influence is no longer focused on the remittances we discussed. It's no longer focused on sentiments, but on strategic investment and legacy. Legacy-driven leadership is what we're saying now, because as more global leaders emerge within the diaspora, many leaders are beginning to have that mindset shift and are increasingly thinking beyond personal success towards impact and institution building and generational legacy back home. And so what's the response we're thinking about today? So the response we're hoping that this webinar will generate is that you begin to engage strategically, not emotionally. The solution to investing smarter back home is smarter engagement with institutions, with structures, with governance, with due diligence and strategy. We also need to think about trusted ecosystems. That's the structure we talked about earlier on. Wealth grows best within credible networks, institutional support systems, and trusted partnerships. Investors need environments where accountability, expertise, and professionalism exist. Institutional guidance is needed because our world is growing more and more complex every day, but investments or investing does not need to be complex. Instead, it should be very strategic. Today's wealth strategy requires sound advisory, proper structure, and long-term planning. And as wealth becomes more sophisticated, institutional guidance becomes more and more valuable. long-term positioning, long-term wealth positioning. Wealth should be positioned not merely for immediate returns, but for sustainability and for legacy. And now the new era. So we've moved from our forefathers who migrated to the diaspora, and all they were thinking about was remitting money back home to support families. And then maybe when they had enough, they will build that mansion to show affluence abroad. I have arrived, I've made it abroad. But much more than that, the new era of investing is thinking more. We're thinking global influence. Diaspora Nigerians now occupy positions of influence in various countries across finance, technology, medicine, academia, entrepreneurship, and even politics in public service or leadership. And this means the diaspora possess powerful global relations and relationships and connections. Their network can create access, partnerships, opportunities, and economic leverage back home that can lead to significant economic transformation. Diaspora expertise and capital can also accelerate innovation, entrepreneurship, investment, and development. And more than that, more than ever, the diaspora is increasingly focused on generational wealth and enduring impact, and there's a growing mindset shift to doing all of that. So, for closing thought, what should we be thinking about? Vincent, I know my time is fast spent. Thank you very much. I'm just going to get out of your hair in a little bit, but what is the bottom line of all of this? When we think about investing, let's think about building beyond ourselves. Wealth should extend beyond personal comfort and consumption. Smart investing looks beyond you, the investor, to generations. We should think generationally. We should create lasting impact. We should shape the future back home. The diaspora possess the ability to influence Nigerians' future meaningfully. We're not merely sending money back home. We're shaping industries. We're shaping the future back home. The diaspora story was once about survival abroad. Today, many are successful. While success abroad is admirable, the real question that remains is what will remain, because you and I living in the diaspora succeeded. The next chapter must be about legacy, it must be about influence, it must be about building wealth that outlives us. And I hope that this webinar would in many ways encourage you to think strategically about investing back home. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I mean, we can see the applause. It just shows how very, very insightful your session was. Thank you so much, Mutupe. It was really, really, I mean, my notes are filled up already. You talked about diaspora capital being more than money, which is really important. Introductions, network, and the likes. You talked about the need to think long term when thinking about investing from diaspora, thinking in generational wealth and the likes. I liked your explanation of the strategic diaspora funnel, the way you presented it. Also, the need for structured investing and the risk of unstructured investing, which is really, really important. And I think that as we move into the panel session, these are some of the things we would also be discussing. And most importantly, your explanation of what true wealth means, right? Which is building enterprise, fueling innovation, creating opportunity, and most importantly, outliving generation. If wealth cannot go from generation to generation, it's not really true wealth. So thank you very much, Modupe, for that wonderful session. To our audience, if you have your questions, you can just put them in the Q&A session, and of course, we'll take them as we progress. We'll move to the panel session now, but just before that, we'll put up a poll up just to feel the pulse of our attendees. So the poll is up on your screen. Just answer honestly, as honest as possible, just for us to see where you are, your position, particularly as regards investment. And of course, at the end of the poll, we're giving out some free consultation to our attendees in diaspora who need to speak with a private wealth manager from Coronation Merchant Bank that will, of course, help you to, move on with your investment plans. So feel free to answer the poll as honest as possible, and we would contact you if you are indicating interest in speaking with a private wealth manager. All right, while the poll is still up on your screen, we would go straight to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist we're introducing today is Banke Anyaleke. Banke is a global data governance lead in a global agrochemical company. She has about 20 years of international professional experience across healthcare and data leadership in Europe and the Middle East. Originally a specialist clinical pharmacist in pediatrics, she also holds postgraduate qualifications in public health and policy from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. She's passionate about informed decision making, legacy building, compounding, and sustainable growth. She brings a practical perspective on how diaspora professionals can turn global earnings, skills, and opportunities into long-term generational wealth. Beyond all this plenty definition of banking, she's an investor from Diaspora in Nigeria, and it's really good to have you here this afternoon. Good afternoon, Banker. Really, really good to have you here.
Thank you, Vincent. So kind of you.
All right, so our next panelist is Ezema Ileka. Ezema is the chief dealer at Coronation Merchant Bank. She's a highly accomplished finance professional with over a decade of progressive experience across global markets, treasury, and investment management. She holds an MSc in International Financial Management with a distinction from the University of Surrey and is a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, as well as an associate of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. She demonstrates deep expertise in executing and managing proprietary and client-focused trades across FX, fixed income, and derivatives, with a strong track record in revenue generation, strategic positioning, and risk management. Currently, as I said earlier, she serves as the chief dealer at Coronation Merchant Bank, leading FX and fixed income trading, treasury sales, and structured product development. Her previous roles across both local and international financial institutions reflect well-rounded exposure to securities trading, structured dealing, portfolio management, investment strategy, and financial analysis. Good to have you, Zima. Really good to have you. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Vincent. Good afternoon, Vincent. Thank you for having
All
me.
right, so we'll dive. Thank you so much. So we'll dive right into it. To our panel question, I will start the first question with you, Banker. During the course of her presentation, Dupe had talked about how Nigerians abroad work hard. I mean, she also mentioned that Nigerians at home work hard too, but Nigerians abroad work hard but feel financially exposed to investing back home. It's sometimes very, very rare to think that most people travel or relocate from Nigeria to diaspora just to have a better life in search of better opportunities. And so they thought about investing back home. They think about the challenges, and it's kind of ruled out in some cases. So as an investor, I'd like to ask, what were your biggest challenges that you faced as a diaspora investor, and how did you overcome them?
I think for me, it was the lack of information at the very inception, right? You actually know you want to invest. You hope you want to invest, no matter where you are in your investment journey. And then when you want to do it, you really realize how sparse the information is. And I mean trusted information, because you want expert information so that you can mitigate risk. There's a lot of like keeping up with the Joneses and other people are doing this, but you really want to know where to go. So I think that was the first thing. And luckily I started sort of like joining wealth clubs and just being in conversation, not where people have apathy about investment, but they have an appetite for it. Then there was also the paralysis that came from, what are my repatriation options? So let's say I get the ginger, I find investment options that work for me. how do I guarantee that there's actually infrastructure to make sure that my money gets back? Because, you know, it's all well and good to have yields, to have return and be liquid, but what's the purpose of liquidity without fluidity? So I did struggle with that, but I think that in the long run, I knew that there was a need because the options were just not there for me in the diaspora as such, because you're not in circles where the opportunities are being discussed. It's very sort of still. There's the real estate, there's the single figure returns, and you just think there must be more to life than this. And I just started really asking myself the questions, you know, what are my goals? Because again, when you're scared of it, which you are sometimes, you have to remind yourself the tenets of investment principles are still the same, whether you want to go into Nigeria or any other geography. So, you know, what are my investment goals? Where am I in my investment journey? What's crippling me? What are my fears about Nigerian investments? And I think having clarity about that was where I started. You know what I mean? So I'm at the stage where I'm building reserve, fiat reserve, whether it's been pound sterling, dollars, or naira, where I can actually take up opportunity. Because when you are in the diaspora, you need to be honest with yourself that investment in Nigeria is probably one of your biggest opportunistic capital type of investment you're going to have, because you just sit here and you're thinking, where are my options? So you're forced to really look outside if you're being strategic enough about investment. So repatriation infrastructure was my biggest concern, and it almost paralyzed my sort of like investment start journey. But we got there in the end because things improved.
All right, thank you very much, Banke. I mean, spot on, right? Because just as you said, when you're abroad, you have to think about investing in Nigeria as one of your biggest options. And despite the challenges, of course, I'm really glad to hear that you were able to, you know, overcome these challenges. And today you're seeing returns on your investments. I mean, you talked about repatriation infrastructure as being one of your biggest challenges. And that brings me to my next question for Izima, right? One of the biggest concerns for diaspora and foreign investors basically is not just how to invest in Nigeria, but how to ensure that the investments are properly documented and protected, especially when it comes to bringing funds back out when needed. I mean, I know there is something called the Certificate of Capital Importation, but of course, I'd like you to touch based on that. I mean, talk to us about what it is, why it's essential, an essential requirement for any diaspora investor looking to invest in Nigeria and, of course, repatriate funds in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. So a certificate of capital importation gives you a legal backing, is issued under the authority of the Central Bank of Nigeria and through various licensed Nigerian banks. So to a foreign investor, confirming that they brought capital. So capital in terms of funds can be equity, equipment, or other assets. So it's been brought into Nigeria from abroad and has been converted into our local currency, which is the naira. So what this document does is that it validates your investments, it validates your conversion, so that when you want to repatriate your profits or even your principal back to your home country, the foreign country, as the case may be, you have access to the official foreign exchange markets in Nigeria. And the good thing about this is that it is not only open to corporate investors, it's also open to individual investors. There are also other legal backings. We have accounts for non-resident Nigerians, which are the diasporans that we're discussing about here today. So there are two accounts that the central bank has introduced into the market over the period in order to capture more of the diasporan floats and also provide confidence because yes, Banker raised a very, very valid point. Major concerns really have always been about the repatriation. So we have two types of accounts, even in Coronation Merchant Bank. The non-resident Nigerian investment account, as well as the non-resident Nigerian ordinary account. So these accounts generally are permitted to repatriate funds, but they are subject to compliance with applicable regulatory requirements. So as far as these requirements are met, then your funds can be repatriated. So for instance, the referenced investment account, right? It allows the non-resident Nigerians to actually invest directly across Nigerian instruments, treasury bills, bonds, equities, even foreign currency investments as well, like Euro bonds. So once your investments are matured or you want to exit, you can easily repatriate your principal and your profits back to your home country, while the ordinary account just enables the Nigerians in diaspora to remit foreign earnings and manage their personal family expenses in both foreign and the local currency with full repatriation rights on the foreign currency balances. So more than a formality, really, this is your protection. So it is what gives you the legal rights to access the foreign exchange market, like I mentioned earlier, through an authorized dealer bank like Coronation Merchant Bank. And this allows you to repatriate your capital on time and even your profits or your dividends, as the case may be. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Ezima. And I mean, I think that it's important that you've explained this so that our attendees understand that first, investing in Nigeria is real, it's profitable, it's important, especially as you look to build your long-term generational wealth. Even to stay liquid, you then need the certificates, and it's important to do that with the right partner so that you're properly guided. And when it's time to repatriate your funds, nobody's telling you stories. So if you've taken our poll, there's a section I talk about having a free consultation with a private wealth manager from Coronation Merchant Bank, and I'm sure they can guide you. We can guide you through having all the necessary documents to ensure that your investments are safe. And even when you need to be liquid abroad, you can easily repatriate your funds. Thank you so much again, Ezima. I'll move to Banke for my next question for you. Again, it still could be very rare, right, to see a successful diaspora investor in Nigeria, right? I'm sure that people on this call wondering how is this happening? I mean, you're abroad and you're thinking about Nigeria investing your funds and the likes. So I'm going to ask you a question around surprising investment opportunities, right? So from your experience, what investment opportunities in Nigeria have surprised you the most in terms of returns?
I think off the mark, I think it's been the Nigerian Stock Exchange has done fantastic things. Like if you're in London and you know how this is, like there's some yields that we have not seen in the past. But I tell you, for my own personal thing, that might not just be on returns, but just availability. And that aligns with the whole diversification story that we tried to say. Say is the commercial papers, and by obviously spreading out my portfolio with those sort of like intermediate risk, with high risk in the proportion that allows me to sleep at night. So I'm very conversant with like Euro bonds, FGF bonds, and things like that. And those have worked. But what I liked was the development and the sheer plethora of options you have with commercial papers now that we didn't have before. And the fact that I can know what tenor I'm dealing with, whether it's 180 days, the yield I'm supposed to expect. I like structure. I like governance that I can rely on, that sort of assures me of a certain sort of return without me stressing. And the yields are fantastic. So it's just the fact that we have so many options of these that has been the surprise. It just really shows me what's happening within the landscape that gives consumer confidence in terms of just those sort of options. So that's been my surprise. The return has been good, but the availability to investors has also been far more pertinent to the investment journey than just returns, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Banke. I mean, you're spot on. the availability to invest, really, and it's something that I think we provide very well here at Coronation Merchant Bank. Talks about commercial papers and the likes. Of course, I know later on we'll talk about guidance, and I think having a private wealth manager and advisor, being in the right circle, the right network, as Mutupe even mentioned, these are important for us to, for you to make the most, the best investment decisions. All right, we would move towards talk to Izima on the next question now. Izima, one of the challenges that we have really for diaspora investors or potential diaspora investors is being able to now invest in any currency aside the dollar, right? Especially because of currency inflations and the likes. And of course, this is what they have, right? They need some standards. They need to, I mean, just for security and that's certainty, even though it's not really promised. Now, what dollar investments are available? I need to talk to us from the angle now to say, as we have attendees listening from diaspora, what dollar investment are available in Nigeria that they can invest in?
Okay, thank you, Vincent. We have quite a bouquet of dollar-denominated investments in Nigeria. So we have the domiciliary fixed deposits. So this is basically foreign currency fixed deposit placements with Nigerian banks, such as Coronation Merchant Bank, offering interest earnings in foreign currency for a specified agreed investment period. Then we also have the federal government of Nigeria Eurobonds. So these are dollar-denominated sovereign bonds that are issued by the federal government of Nigeria. Here, investors tend to earn coupon payments every 6 months and principal repayments when the bonds mature. Then you also have the corporate bonds, so the foreign currency bonds that are issued by Nigerian corporates in this case, such as banks, oil and gas companies, and so on, so large institutions. Then, interestingly, we can also invest in offshore fixed income investments as well, such as foreign government securities. And there are quite a lot. We also have other structured dollar investments, like we have the dual currency investment structures. So, which is an interesting part for the foreign investors. And we have even investment linked notes in the foreign currency space as well. But however, the most common dollar investments we see foreign investors or diasporans do in Nigeria still remain the Eurobonds as well as the domiciliary fixed deposits with banks. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Izima. Thank you. And I'm sure that attendees have heard the plethora of dollar investment opportunities. And of course, you can key in. So if you want to invest in Naira, you want to invest in the dollar, the best bet just speak to your private wealth manager, which of course, Coronation Merchant Bank, and will get you started. Let's talk to you, Banke, a bit more practical now, right? And this is about balancing wealth across borders. For many diaspora Nigerians, wealth planning is no longer just about earning abroad, right? Modupe talked about it in her keynote presentation. It's also about deciding how much capital should remain offshore versus how much should be positioned back home for long-term growth and legacy building. Coupled with the fact that, of course, people still have maybe black taxes to pay and a number of things to do with their money. Now, with all this in mind, how do you decide how much of your income to reinvest in Nigeria versus keeping abroad? What is any formula you share for our audience listening?
I think this is very personal, and I think it really has to go back to who you are, then the type of investor that you are, and your reality, and the stage of life that you are. So for me, I think before you start going into percentages of like what part of my investment sits where, it's like, what are my goals? Am I at the stage where, pension planning is what I'm trying to do for retirement planning? Am I more concerned about cash flow? Am I more concerned about sort of like compounding sort of elements of investments just to sort of build wealth. And really and truly, I look at it and I think the core, my bread and butter, such as my pensions, my ISAs, my real estate, in a good sort of like 40 to 60% has to be where I am at and it's safe. But in order to really build wealth and to take risk and to seek those opportunities, like I was honest about in the initial question, that's quite scarce in my geography. So I need to do something so that the capital can do enough and reassure me of that like bread and butter. So in a way, for me, another sort of like 30% has to be something that's ready for those opportunist capital and sort of like investment opportunities to be able to take it up. Now that we've solved the sort of like repatriation infrastructure, I'm able to actually have my assets being able to get liquid and fluid enough if I need to. So when that's sorted, you're more confident in increasing that percentage. But like I said, you have to thyself be true. What stage are you at, right? And what part of that can you really have sort of like a way and be able to rely on it coming back in a certain way. But really and truly, if you have done the due diligence, if you have taken compliance and governance properly, where you've done this thing in the strategic way of structure, there should be a level of confidence that affords you to be able to take up the opportunity. And at this stage, be able to be comfortable with going forth and saying, you know what, I'm going to be able to allocate at least 30 to 40% of this to take up those opportunities with the yields that make sense, because you can play it safe, and that's why you need to know the level of risk that you can take. But people on the call can also appreciate that in the diaspora we have some nuances with our risk appetite when it comes to investing. So there's no point copying someone else. I think go with your investment objectives and goals, let it align with your reality. You know what I mean? So if you have some sort of residual skill or residual expertise that gives you confidence in a certain instrument, or maybe in sort of like a certain investment pattern, then you have more confidence to allocate more percentage to that. So copying and pasting from another person is not really the way to go with this. You know, expertise reduces and mitigates risk. So get your knowledge together, be socially and intellectually curious. Don't suspend your brain where investment is concerned. Now your money, now you know, it's your money, right? So you can't be flippant about it. You can't be like letting your ego take shape and control everything, and you're not going to ask questions. And I mean pertinent questions. And you have to just be true to yourself. You know what I mean? What do I want to achieve now? And that can change. You know, there's actually intra-person dependent factors that can change along the way. So it's a longitudinal journey. So your distribution of your portfolio and your diversification can change along the way. When I was like at the very beginning, I was very concerned about earning more and basically conserving more before I can allocate more to a system that I cannot control. But Nigeria is no longer I cannot control. I'm trusting the governance, I'm trusting the compliance. So my percentage that I can afford to put into that landscape has increased over time. If you ask me this question 10 years ago, it's a very different answer, right? If you ask this question to another friend or my mom or my sister who have different investment goals and objectives, it will also be different. But the point is, make sure that there's clarity of goals, make sure there's honesty of intention, make sure you're compounding your skills and expertise to make informed decisions, and stop thinking that someone else is going to do it for you, or what works for someone else will work for you. You can't be socially and cognitively lazy when it comes to how you distribute your percentages of portfolio. So that's all I have to say on that one.
Thank you. And thank you for being really honest about that. Biggest takeout here: to thyself be true, right? Think about your objectives, and then be exposed to these things. Subscribe to information. I think from Coronation's end, we have regular newsletters on investments. Subscribe to such newsletters and just get to know what's happening and understand. Of course, be true to yourself before making such decisions. So thank you so much for that, Banke. In our previous question, we talked a bit about currency risk, but we didn't talk so much about the strategies that can help protect investor returns. So let's talk about how currency risk affects investments. So tell us, how do you think currency risk affects investments, and what strategies can help to protect investor returns?
Currency risk is really one of the primary concerns for many investors, especially foreign investors, because the Naira depreciation can erode your Naira-denominated returns when you convert it back to your foreign currency. So the risk is very valid, but there are also ways to mitigate this risk. Investors normally would be advised to diversify, which is what Banke also touched on when she was sharing her experience. So you can diversify across both the Naira and hard currency instruments. So when you have dollar-denominated options like Euro bonds, domiciliary fixed deposits with the banks, and other USD-denominated investments, this provides a natural currency hedging because you're investing in foreign currency and not in the local Naira. Now, in terms of managing the Naira currency exposures, there are some strategies such as a structured forward contracts, which is one product we offer in Coronation Merchant Bank that allows you lock in an exchange rate today for your future conversion, thereby protecting you against adverse movements in the exchange rates. So especially when you're investing in certain fixed income products, so you already know the date of maturity. So you already know your expected interest income that you're going to receive on the day of maturity. And you can factor in based on your forward rates, what rate you would be willing to repatriate your funds at that particular date. You do it today. So that gives you a hedge. Then you have a swap contract. So this is just basically the exchange of currencies for a particular period of time. We have a lot more ways returns can be protected through a bouquet of other offerings dependent on the type of investment. So you see, it's personal. So it depends on even the investor's risk appetite, as well as the duration of the investments in order to structure a hedge that would work perfectly and in the best interest for the investor. So just taking us back to what Banke shared from her personal experience, you see she kept on emphasizing on it being very personal. So the hedges too are structured based on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ezima, and really good to know. I mean, I think our attendees would sit, I mean, at ease, understanding that, of course, you can lock in an exchange rate, and there are really good strategies in place. Coronation Merchant Bank structured investment plans to help you to, mitigate the risk of currency fluctuations and the like. So. And I think everything is just coming up and adding up together, because think about it, you have the repatriation infrastructure sorted out in terms of getting your funds out when you need them. So you've been able to stay liquid even though you're abroad. I mean, when you need them, you get them out. You already know the set time, and now you can even lock in a currency, an exchange rate. I think it's really good, and it gives more opportunities to investors abroad, investors in diaspora, to invest in Nigeria and generate really good returns. So thank you so much, Ezima. Our next question is for Banke, and we'd like to just talk about the role of professional wealth management, right? I know that from Modupe's keynote presentation, she talked about diaspora capital being more than money, right? And so I just want to know, as investment opportunities become more complex, become global, many investors are beginning to realize the importance of professional guidance rather than making purely emotional or informal investment decisions. I mean, in your previous answer, you talked about now your money, you need to put your eyes there, right? So what role has professional wealth management played in your investment decisions? Or what do you think the role of professional wealth management will be for investors just even coming up?
I think mainly well, for me anyway, it's been about that help with structuring, like knowing how to have your investment structured, tailored to you, of course. But that's what we mean by working together with your wealth manager, and because they can basically look at you and say, "Oh, what would you like to achieve? How can we do that within the tenets of what you can afford?" But sometimes I think it's not just not knowing the structure, right? It's about being comfortable with putting money where you're actually interested in it. Because I think the psychology of money that we need to get comfortable with is like wherever your heart is more in tune with, you're going to monitor it a lot more, right? And that's why I think, especially with professionals in the diaspora, when these things are structured for you, when opportunities are brought to the table, you also can use your sort of like intrinsic interest to guide you. And then the professional can tell you how to mitigate risk within those things that you like. But don't suspend your own skills or your own knowledge in certain industries, because I think sometimes that's really where the cake is. Sometimes you're just going to know more about something that will blow, right? Just before COVID, we're doing a lot of research on vaccines that will come. I was in healthcare and pharmaceuticals. Like if I tell you how much inside knowledge that while you're sitting with your wealth manager, you can really have some sort of synergy that could bring things home very quickly. So I just thought I'll get that out there. So I think it's very good because they can structure, they can help you see the blind spots that you wouldn't see because you're not a professional in that field. So don't be arrogant enough to not seek help when it's there, but also don't suspend your own individual skills, right? So that's that. For me, secondly, I find that of like estate planning and legacy planning is not something that comes naturally to us. And I think I like to put that to the experts. So really and truly, that at this stage in my life, that's why I use professionals. You know what I mean? So they filter the sort of risk for me and they structure things for me, just because compliance is no joke. It doesn't play with anybody. And also because at this point, you can do all of that. If you're a bit scatty and you're scattered and you're not really thinking about legacy planning in a successive way with clear succession plans and having things in place that's visible, that's sort of discoverable, you're just kidding yourself. You might as well just put money under a mattress, which I don't suggest you do, but that's why I use them.
Thank you so much, Banke. Thank you. Really spot on. Modupe, it seems you had your hand up. You'd like to.
Yes, actually, but Banker had addressed it. But I also wanted to say, Banker, you referenced a lack of information earlier on when you were talking. But the flip side of that is too much, a plethora of information, too much information where you need to filter out the noise. And that is where professional guidance comes in. So I just wanted to highlight that sometimes, you have too much information, and then that information, if it's not filtered through the expertise of a professional, you could fall into emotional investing because it's a friend who knows a friend who came highly recommended, and then before you know it, funds are lost and, all of that. Just wanted to point that out, Vincent. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I couldn't agree less for you. You really hit the nail on the head there, because at this stage, really, emotional, sentimental investing is a no-no. If you can, stick with the professionals, they guide you properly. Managing your fund, nothing is more than a trusted partner. Especially working so hard abroad. And then someone says, "Oh, I know a friend," and then there's knows a friend that will invest this money and gives you 30%, and you're not sure of that. And then you're working so hard and nothing's happening to your money yet. They're stealing it from you or sort of that. So please, it's always important, just as everyone has said, the role of a professional wealth manager cannot be really overstated. All right, Isma, let's go to you for our next question. And this talks about protecting against devaluation, right? I mean, beyond returns alone, many investors are now focused on being able to preserve purchasing power and hedge over currency weakness, I mean, over time. So what are some practical ways investments can be protected from Naira devaluation?
Okay, thank you very much, Vincent. So just like the previous speakers mentioned during their different sessions, and when Banke also touched on some questions, diversification was really emphasized. So you need to diversify. You should have a portfolio that is diversified across currencies and even investments that are spread across both Naira and dollars, so that no single FX event wipes out the full portfolio. The thing about investments is that they can actually be protected from Naira devaluation through diversifying into assets that are either appreciating with currency weakness or preserve value in foreign currency terms. So that's the essence for diversification, because it just provides a balance. Then there are also some other strategies. So you can do short-term investment plays. So for instance, an investor would rather do a 91-day treasury bills or commercial paper investments that would always allow you to reassess your FX exposure every quarter rather than locking in long-term based on your risk appetite. Then, or you can just say, you know what, I don't want to convert my currency, but I want higher yields that I cannot be offered in my own home country. So let me just invest in FGN Eurobonds or do fixed deposits, fixed salary deposits with banks, which has zero Naira exposure, and you have yields at about 9%, 7 to 9%, where you can just enjoy comfortably well, knowing that you did not convert your money, that your money is still in hard currency, which is what I spoke to earlier on, which is just your natural currency hedging, because there is no conversion at all. Then most importantly, invest in protection. We spoke about FX forwards and swaps and other structured FX solutions earlier on. They provide hedges to currency exposures, and they make you sleep better at night than just leaving your positions open. But again, it depends on your risk appetite. So investment is personal, and it depends on how much risk you can take. So how much risk you can take would also determine how much protection you would want on your investments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Izima. Thank you very much. Really, really spot on. We'll move quickly to Banker for the next question. And I mean, just tell us briefly, a lot of Nigerians in diaspora want to start investing back home. I know we have a number of them on this call. We've even seen questions already in the Q&A session saying, really they want to they want to start investing and all that. But a number of them are worried about making costly mistakes or entering the market at the wrong time. I know that all the conversations we've had today should be able to, clear those doubts and ease the minds of potential investors. But what advice would you give to a first-time diaspora investor looking to put money into Nigeria? Just very briefly, what advice will you give to a first-time diaspora investor looking to put money into Nigeria?
Just start. I think we overthink these things a lot. I think the principles and the tenets of investments are quite universal. So you can just start. There's some nuances you need to appreciate, but I think on a normal scale, just make sure that you have your sort of like emergency fund that would allow you to sort of survive, and you don't think that investment is going to cost you your life. So obviously, a lot of people on this call are probably NEPO adults, so that doesn't affect them. But in case you're not and you need to build your reserve, that's your go-to, just make sure you actually have money. And it doesn't have to be sort of like excessive. It just has to be a culture. You need to just develop the culture and the discipline that's required to do that. If you see it as something that's business as usual, you will commit to it, just like everything else, right? So yeah, build your reserve, have your reserve so you can take care and take those opportunities. Understand that the yields are currently better right now. That's just the reality when you compare it to opportunities that are around you. So you don't have enough reason to have a thought paralysis about not investing in Nigeria because the data points are there, right? So in terms of giving you options, in terms of giving you diversification, and in terms of giving you the yields. So that's not an excuse, right? So I think another thing is start with things that are steady, start with things that we've discussed that you're quite confident in the governance that surrounds them. You're quite confident in the compliance structure of repatriation so that Barclays is not going to call you tomorrow and tell you to defend this and you don't have anything to say, right? So that's that. So that yields, returns, liquidity can come back to you and they're bankable, right? So you will not, because this has to be sustainable. So if you want to do this, if you want to mitigate the bad experiences, understand the structure, understand the importance of governance, understand the compliance that you need to go with. So yeah, get your money up or get your money consistently to commit to investment. Do medium risk things, such as, like I said, I like commercial papers. I like the bonds. I know the yield. I know the time I'm going to get my money back. I'm not crying and I'm not having to drink Gary about it. So that's a good way to start. When you're confident and you're happy and it's been good to you, I think the higher risk things can be, put into your basket because they can be quite rewarding. Even you can start to say, okay, I've done the steady ones. I want to know what's a higher yield. What can I put my money into? Again, a percentage that makes sense. So be seed investing, something a bit quirky. Again, if it's compounding on your skill set, where your expertise can mitigate risk, there's no reason why you can't do that. Everything has to be in a format that really sets you in a comfortable pace, that's not doing something you wouldn't sustain. It's like getting fit and going to the gym. If you start with activities you can't sustain, your body will tell you. So strategy, clarity about your goals, honesty about who you are, honesty about what you can sustain, and really and truly something to ginger you. What are you trying to achieve here? So that's really what I think is really important if you're going into it. And seek the information. Make sure your social capital is in tandem with the capital, the fiat capital you're trying to get. Get around people that don't have apathy about Nigeria, because the truth is, we become what we think. You can't want to invest in Nigeria but have all these bad notions about Nigeria that are not fact-based. So surround yourself with people that are really quite objective, not to have tinted rose-tinted glasses and not see the risk, but to actually have objective conversations so that you can really be gingered, right? So just do some sort of house cleaning, right? Journal if you want to. See if is my reality and my interaction really positioned in a way of where I want to go, where my investments are. So treat it the way you treat your professional journey. Treat it the way you treat your relationships, because what you put in is what you get out. And I think what you surround yourself with, what you feed yourself with, it really can be quite telling as to where you're going to go with your investment journey. So get your house in order and make sure that you really seek the importance of governance and of compliance so that you don't get burned and then you don't then do it. And then you start telling everybody else that, I'll never do this. So let's go in love and sense.
Thank you so much, Mikey. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, just that. And of course, start with a partner that you can trust. Start with a partner that has governance, structure, compliance. These are issues you don't want affecting you in the future. And then you become a bad evangelist for investing in Nigeria. But I mean, just that and start properly. Thank you so much, Banke. All right. Listen, but there are people in this webinar who are asking, what do I invest into though, right? So I want us to talk about it now. 5 investment vehicles currently available to Nigerians in the diaspora. Just tell us.
Okay, so you have the federal government of Nigeria bonds and treasury bills. You have Euro bonds that are issued by the federal government of Nigeria as well as corporates. Then bankers spoke about equities, so you still have the equities. Then you have money market investments, various money market investments. You also have placements and other investments you can do with the banks, then real estate as well. Those are the major ones currently that we see a lot of diasporans show interest in.
Thank you very much. And of course, if you're a diasporan on this call, if you are interested in any of the investments, you can speak with a private wealth manager. I see some people say they didn't get the poll. If you're just joining the call, the poll should be on your screen, so you can just indicate your interest, or you can send us an email or drop a message, and we will contact you. If you even drop a message on the chat saying, I am interested in speaking to a private wealth manager, we will reach out to you after the webinar. So we're just here to guide you and ensure that you're making the right decisions in terms of your investments. All right, our final question for Banke before we move into the Q&A session. What do you think that the future of Nigeria's investment landscape would look like? I mean, from your perspective.
I think it's going to be a lot more competitive in terms of presenting itself to the diaspora and even in the Pan-African structure. I think we've already seen examples of that. Again, I can't avoid the fact that we've had a lot more companies listed on the stock exchange. There's also consumer confidence, right? And it's in tandem with the lack of opportunities that we're having in the diaspora. So you know what I mean? It's going to fit perfectly. So as much as we are going to look attractive to the people trying to bring money in, the landscape is also able to feed into that. It's also able to present options to investors. Like I said, I'd never seen so many commercial papers, and I saw it and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. So in a situation where you're not seeing those opportunities in London, in Paris, in Basel, you're going to look for it elsewhere. So when you look to Nigeria and Nigeria has something for you, you're going to do just that. You're going to bring your money in. So I think that the landscape will present itself as being quite attractive to investors. And in doing so, we're going to have the confidence and there'll be more to do. And I think in that respect, people are also going to realize other options that may not be popular now, like the ones I like seed investment, for example. In the UK, we've got systems in place that sort of like, they give us tax reliefs, right? So we get incentives for, encouraging startups. So it's not like we're nice people, but angel investors are plenty because we get something back for it. So it is my hope and it is my belief that that segment in the Nigerian landscape would also increase, right? And it's also the fact that the more we become financially literate, the more we see the fruits of investment. And hopefully, if there's some sort of stability with policies, then we know that, okay, if I do this now, the remittance policy is not going to change on me in the next 10 months, then I'm going to do it. So I think that it's going to be quite interesting. It's going to be more positioned as a viable options and landscape. And I think really and truly, it's an exciting time. Me personally, I feel far more comfortable and confident in increasing my percentage of investment portfolio because I like money, I like the yields, and I feel like there's a certain confidence that I have now that I can say, okay, this will happen in the next 18 months. And I stay curious, I stay informed, right? So I'm also committing to that level of due diligence that I need to do as an investor. And I think more people will do that. And there's a lot of us. So I just think that it's going to be far more competitive. And I like that for us.
Thank you very much, Banke. I mean, I'm rooting for that too, saying that it's going to be more competitive. Bring home the money, right? Bring it home, invest, and get returns. In that same light, I would just like to ask Ezima the final question before we move to the Q&A. Why Nigeria? I mean, it could be anywhere in the world. You've left but why Nigeria? Why are you telling our people who are listening or joining us today, why Nigeria? Maybe you could give us maybe 2 strong reasons why diaspora investors should still pay attention to opportunities back home.
Okay, so first of all, interest rates are high, which means your money works harder. So right now in the country, government fixed income instruments are offering some of the highest returns in the world. So you have between 16 and 20%. For an investor willing to manage currency side carefully, the income potential has to be exceptional. And this is what we currently have. in Nigeria. Then secondly, the currency, which is the big elephant in the room, is stable. So one of the biggest fears investors had about Nigeria was naira depreciation. That depreciation has largely already happened, and we've noticed and seen, even through data, because it's always good to verify with the available data. Data doesn't lie. So we've seen that the naira has adjusted significantly and remained fairly stable and liquid. I know you said mention 2 points, but I have another third point, which is very critical. The diaspora has a home advantage. As a Nigerian in the diaspora, you have an added advantage. There's cultural understanding, you have family networks, you have on the ground insights. That knowledge is a genuine investment edge that you have, combined with financial products and even from professional advice and support, it puts you in a stronger position. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ezima. Thank you also for adding a third one, and I'm sure that attendees and the audience they must have gotten more convinced about why they should invest in Nigeria, right? So, I mean, it's really, really important that you, of course, all the steps that have been announced or shared in this webinar today. It's important that you put those in action. I see our people already indicating to speak to a private wealth manager. We will contact you and we'll get you started in beginning your investment journey or even helping you make smarter investment decisions. All right, we have some questions in the Q&A. Because of time, we may not be able to take everything, but be rest assured that we will contact you. We will take your questions. We'll reach out to you. But before we take a few, we'd just like to play a short video just to, especially to give those who are just coming in or who missed our first intro, a bit more about Coronation Merchant Bank. Thank you very much again. Yeah, so I see, a number of questions where I think have been treated in the course of the different presentations. I think, okay, Ezima, could you just speak a bit more on the application of the capital importation certificates, just to guide people who who missed out or who are deeply interested? Of course, you should reach out to a private manager and they'll guide you through. But for general knowledge, you just speak more about that.
Okay, thank you. I can see there are a lot of questions around the certificate of capital importation. So, as I previously mentioned, it's an official document that is issued under the authority of the Central Bank of Nigeria and further issued by banks. So CBN gives banks the authority to issue this certificates to foreign investors that bring capital via funds into the Nigerian market and convert it into the local currency. So it's an evidence that, yes, you said you did what you did. And the advantage of this is that you have a legal right, which is that certificate. So whenever you want to exit, you come in through the official foreign exchange market that is highly liquid and you can exit on time. And I also talked about two diasporan accounts for non-resident Nigerians. One is an investment account and the other one is an ordinary account. So the ordinary account is more of like an operational account, but you can still repatriate funds from the account. So your foreign earnings can be fully repatriated back to your home country. Then the other portion that you convert for personal or family expenses or obligations that you spend, you can equally convert that back to your foreign currency as far as they pass through certain verifiable documentations. Then for the investment accounts, from that investment account, you can invest in Nigerian instruments. You can also invest in Eurobonds, and it is backed by full repatriation of your principal and your profits. So all this gives you a legal right, gives you comfort that you can always access the official foreign exchange markets through a bank like Coronation Merchant Bank. We're really heavy on this, and we're known very well for this in the market, for on-time repatriation back into your home country, your capital and your returns on time. And there's one thing they say about time. Time is very sensitive when it comes to the exchange rate. So it is good that you bank with a partner that can give you this service in record time. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ezima, for that wonderful answer. We'll just take one more because of time, but we'll reach out to everyone. I see we're already answering some on the back end, so we'll reach out to everyone who's asking a question on rates, to partner with us for contacts. Of course, we would reach out to you. There's a question around generational wealth. If Modupe, if you could please talk a bit about this, and maybe, everyone can just chip in. It says, hello, talking about generational wealth, what investment strategies ensure that my investments are freely transferred to my future generation with ease?
Well, investment strategies would, again, depend on your own long-term goals, but transferring it with ease would come from the help of a professional who's able to navigate the landscape for you and tell you exactly where the loopholes are, which one has a high yield and all of that. So you could go into look into the real assets I spoke about, high yielding yield generation investments, for example. One that is often overlooked, and bankers spoke about angel investors, is that you yourself as a diaspora can become an angel investor. You can go into enterprise investing. There are lots of businesses in Nigeria that lack the capital, that lack the funding. Look into a viable one, again, with the help of a professional, and find out which works for you. I think all of this will be working with a professional in a structured environment. These are strategic ways you can begin to invest and look into the kind of assets or portfolios you can invest in, and then be able to transfer with ease. I know I responded. I hope I answered the person's question.
Thank you so much, Modupe. Yes, I think you have. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything to that. Okay, so I think that we have successfully answered that question. There are other questions, we would reach out to you. I see a number of people also asking for the recording of this session. It will be sent to you to your email, as well as the presentation document. So it will be shared with you. And of course, you can always reach out to us at marketingcoms, COMMS at coronationmb.com. marketingcoms@coronationmb.com. And of course, we would take the conversations from there. On behalf of everyone behind the stage and everyone planning this, it's been a long time coming. We want to say thank you. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our speakers, to Modupe, to Ezima, to Banker. Thank you for taking time to be with us here this afternoon or morning, as the case may be. Thank you for all your hard work, the explanations, the insights that you have shared with our attendees. I think it's been a great session. The feedback from people already on the comment section and all that, people say it's wonderful, and I think it's really been wonderful. So thank you really for your time. And a big thank you also to our attendees, right? Thank you for joining from wherever you've joined everywhere across the world. I mean, in Nigeria, it's afternoon. In Canada, it's morning. Wherever you've joined us from the UK, from the United States, thank you so much for joining us. For discussing this very important topic. Together, we are here to guide you to ensure that you are able to begin to make smarter decisions in terms of your investment, to invest in Nigeria, and also to make very, very good returns. So thank you so much. We'll come your way again next time. Thank you. And you can always reach out to us at Coronation Merchant Bank, and we will support you. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.